Want to spend a few minutes this morning, this afternoon, it's already 1, to discuss the who, what, when, where, why of this new communications property tax. The legislature imposed a new law saying that all communications property is going to be set in the grand list as real estate. So what is communications property? It is anything that is the tangible personal property used to enable the real-time two-way electromagnetic transmission of information such as audio, video, and data. So internet, phone, cell phone, television, things of that nature. For many of you, this will be the first time this sort of property is eligible to be added to the grand list. For some of you who tax business personal property, elements of this type of asset may be in your grand lists, but it should be new for most of us. So the who, we have contracted with Sanssouci Associates to appraise all of the communications property statewide. They're a New Hampshire-based special purpose property appraisal firm. And they've been charged with identifying on a per municipality basis all of the communications equipment in the state. They're going to be doing this through actual physical inspections in some cases of sites, cell tower sites, some actual physical property, and querying all of the companies who operate in Vermont what sort of inventory that they have. They're going to be filing inventories with Sanssouci. And the when is for this coming grand list year. This is property that's going to be added to the 2026 grand list. And the idea is we will be supplied all of the property information, all of the assessments from the appraisal firm, and then PVR will distribute that to you to input in the grand list. So we'll be giving you contact info, the owner's name, their mailing address, the appraised value, and again, in specific instances, a physical location when that's applicable. Like if it is a specific cell tower site installed on a specific parcel, we'll tell you what that is and where that is. Similar to what you've seen in the past with companies like Comcast, you may get one combined value of all of the property in town, regardless of location, specifically for things like fiber optic cables, telephone wire, things like that. It'll be all of the property town-wide. For those of you who have taxed business personal property in the past, we're going to need to be careful to parse out the differences here. So by this law, all assets deemed as communications property is going to be considered real property, real estate, and that's going to be taxed on both the municipal and the education grand list. If you're a town that levies personal property tax, there are still going to be items that are eligible for that. So personal property inventory, that's going to be merchandise for sale. I say if there's a AT&T store in your town and you tax business inventory, the items for sale in that store, cell phone cases, charging cables, what have you, is still eligible for taxation. Or machinery and equipment, any assets that don't fall under that definition of communications property, like office furniture, the printers and the copiers in their offices, that is still assessed independently by the towns who levy personal property tax. And we have articulated to the communications companies that they're going to be responsible to report that sort of personal property directly to you when you send out your inventory request forms in the spring. We are asking for your help to identify any existing communications property already on the grand list. We're going to be reporting any assets that you help us flag to our contractor. And this is in an effort to discover any potentially unknown communications assets, and more so to help prevent any double counting of assets as real property and personal property. Again, the contractor is going to be querying all these companies and gathering data independently, but this is just as a cross check, a two is one is none sort of approach to this. For most of you, the only eligible property in your grant lists already existing is probably going to be cable. That used to be a personal property that the state had a special caveat to assess as real estate. It was on both the education and the municipal grant list. That will now be captured as communications property under this new value. And then again, there are towns who do capture cell tower sites, which could be comprised of many elements. It could be land, buildings and structures, the tower itself, and the equipment attached to that tower, such as the broadcast antennas. So how we're going to identify this property, we've added a new category code to the grand list. So category codes like your R1, R2, commercial, etc. We've added a new code, TC, for telecommunications property. And we're going to ask that all new and existing communications property gets lumped together under this new TC code. This is in an effort to keep track of all of this new, fresh information in one place. Within that new grand list category, we've broken down a number of subtypes to help identify assets that could fall under the umbrella of communications equipment. We don't expect anyone to be experts in all of the different types of data, but these subtypes could potentially already exist in your grand list. And to the best of your ability, we'll ask you to fill this information out and check any that may apply to a specific parcel in your grand list. This is a work in progress. It's gonna take a lot of working together, and there's gonna be bumps along the way. I certainly don't have all of the answers yet, and I'm gonna rely on you all to point out unique specific situations occurring in your towns and ask questions, and I can help find the best solution of how to capture the value, how to list this type of property. So I just want to share my contact info. Benton Mitchell, email me directly, call me anytime. That's my direct phone number. And we hope to have all these values in place and ready for you by May 1st so we can lodge our grand lists.
How about now?
There she is.
There
What you got, Lisa?
So when we have a parcel and it's got a cell tower lease within the land parcel, which is a category M, and then we're going to have a TC category, do we need to break that out and create a sub parcel for that?
We're discussing the best way to do that right now. Chris and I
Okay.
actually talked about it some more this morning. We want, because the land is not strictly going to fall under this communications classification, we want it to stay whatever the highest and best use category is. But for now, we do want to flag it as having something to do with the communications parcel. So if you have a leasehold value on a land parcel, Chris may have some more comments on this. We're thinking to maybe use the location ABC, somewhere to just notate that and keep a running list that I may ask you for in the future so we can parse those out. Sansusi Associates will help us derive those leasehold values, that additional value for the right for that property to be on a parcel.
So I have a question on that because, so I have 2 cell towers in town. They both are attached to land. And there are like B and C files that go with them for like SB, the other companies. Just
Right.
gets a little complicated, so breaking it out or how that's gonna be done is gonna be a big piece. I don't,
And hopefully the idea with this is most of that heavy lifting is going to be done by the contractor. But what Lori's saying is you could have one company own the tower and then lease space to Verizon and AT&T who could have equipment mounted on that tower. So the contractor is going to be responsible for listing that property to each individual owner. So in this case, SB Towers would be a parcel and have a value
I
in a
do have
grand
them
list.
broken like that. I do have them
Yep.
broken out like A, B, and C. Yep.
Yep, good.
Okay.
And we will be getting a fresh inventory per town of the owners and their equipment. So you will get a value for SB Towers from Sans Souci and a value for any of the cell carriers that would have equipment mounted to that tower. They would be individual parcels by company, by owner, and the value of their respective equipment would be provided to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so let me ask the questions that's online, that's in the comments.
Sure.
So Lisa Wright, we have already been advised to make a separate parcel for the leasehold value. That's just a comment.
Okay.
Sharon in Orwell, we have a cell tower on top of a silo. How do we handle that?
Right. So similar to that, to leased land, if a farmer's leasing a corner of their field to a cell tower company, you will want to keep the silo itself in with your real estate parcel, highest and best use farm or R1, R2, wherever that lives. And we'll help provide an additional contributory value to that parcel for the lease, for the money given from the communications company to the owner of the silo. And then on top of that, you will get a new parcel value and owner of that equipment. So if it's a Verizon antenna, you'll get a value for Verizon for that antenna. That'll be a separate parcel from the silo itself.
Okay, so if a company grieves the assessment, will the state defend that for us? That's
Yes.
Tim Dunn.
That's a great question. So similar to how we have handled the transmission and distribution, when the legislature wrote this, they didn't rewrite the process for appeals broadly in the grand list. So the same steps have to be followed. They file an appeal, a grievance with you at the local level. And our recommendation is to deny that grievance. It'll go to the BCA. The BCA should also deny that grievance and bring it directly to the state. And our contractor is going to help defend those values. It has to go through that same structure, just the way the rules are written, but deny it all the way up to the state level and let us handle the appeal.
Castleton assessor says, our towers that are currently exempt because of removal or restore agreement in the leases still exempt?
Any existing, this is a little bit above my skis. I'm not going to admit to be an expert on all of these pieces, but generally speaking, any agreements, settlements already in place should be honored based on the specifics of those agreements for the time being, and then handled on a case-by-case basis, I guess I will say for now. I can get further clarification on those. But similar to how we had that caveat in transmission and distribution, honor existing settlements for the time being, and then new values can be applied when applicable.
Then Tom Vickery, is there going to be a distinction between radio and cell towers?
It's all communications equipment. It's all going to be valued at highest and best use by our contractor, and those values are going to be handed to you in terms of the methodology and what fair market value for that specific technology types are. Absolutely, they'll have differences in how they're handled. For us at the grand list level, owner, value supplied by our contractor.
So Benton, I think what Castleton was referring to is the parameters under which we had the decision tree in the past, which would have labeled some
Okay.
of that stuff as personal property because of the removal pieces when you read the agreement.
Okay.
I believe the
Understood.
legislation is the trump card now. So what was prior possibly not taxable because of that would no longer be the case. So I think with this, we're going to be picking up a lot of things we may not have previously taxed. And I think that was the
Absolutely.
intent of the legislature. So
Absolutely.
I think for you, Mary Jo, the answer is yes, it will become taxable now.
Yeah, that legislation very specifically states that even though this is tangible business personal property, it is going to be considered real property for the grand list. Absolutely.
Okay, then Beth Dolly, sorry you couldn't unmute. We have a tower that was built on current use land. We removed acreage from current use, and it is now taxed as regular land. Will we now have to make another parcel for that acreage?
So the land the tower sits on was enrolled in current use and then removed from current use. I have that part right?
It looks like it from her,
Yeah.
what she wrote, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so
She said yes.
okay, yeah. So the land value is still being derived from your land schedule. It's still a value coming from you. It would be coded under that larger parcel, highest and best use, R1, R2, whatever it may be. There will be a contributory value for the lease itself. So how much does that lease agreement bring to the property on top of its normal appraisal as land, as real estate?
Okay, Jeff Barlow, do you know if cell towers will be valued based on how many leases are on the tower or RCNLD? Or a combo?
I think a combination. I don't want to get into the specifics of the methodology just because I am not the expert in that, and we do have an expert on that, but it certainly is going to be a replacement cost and capitalized. So if there is a tower with many different carriers on it, they're paying multiple rents. It will be worth more than just a general tower value. All of those elements are going to be considered.
Okay, and then Lisa Wright, can you confirm if values will be adjusted for the town CLA? And will that include lease value as well as equipment parcels?
I believe this will all be subject to the CLA adjustment. And I think that is due like it was with the transmission and distribution property. It's because we are supplying values to a grand list where all property is not reappraised every single year. And so some form of equalization has to be done. That was the deciding factor with transmission and distribution. And I believe this is going to be handled the same way.
One more, Natasha. If the town always had personal property, how different will it be for us now?
Right. Great question. So your former personal property reportings could go down. They could be reduced as items that used to be eligible on that personal property side are now captured as communications property and assessed as real property. But certain elements are still going to be eligible for tax by you. Again, that inventory and machinery and equipment, the business assets that don't fall under the communications property definition. So they will absolutely change. For most towns, especially all the towns that didn't tax personal property, you're going to be gaining more property, more valuation on your grand list. For the personal property towns, think of it more of a redistribution. Some of it will be going from personal to real, and then there'll still be some elements of personal. And we got one more from Lisa.
I just wanted to ask so the new TC category, that will be taxable on the municipal side and on the education side?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, it's considered real property now. Yep.
And that's the last one.
Okay. Chris, are you here and able to?
I am
All
here,
right.
taking this all in.
It's a lot.
So, I mean, it is and it isn't. A lot of it, all these questions that people are asking now, we're so on the foamy part of the wave in this process. We have to wait for Sans Souci to get us information. And basically, all you're asking the listers to do at this time is to kind of look through some of their parcels in the grand list. Is there something that might fit this telecom bucket? And if so, let's just kind of flag it, maybe not do anything with it other than make a note about it. Because really where the rubber's going to meet the road is when we get information back from Mr. Sans Souci. And when we get that information back, then you can cross-reference and say, oh, you know, like Mary Jo Teeter said, I've got a cell tower here in Castleton or Pulteney, whichever entity. Does Sans Souci have it on his list? And what did he come up with? And did he know about this caveat that she obviously knows? That's the beauty of having local officials. And then we're just going to have to cross that bridge and bring those individual uniquenesses up and say, how do we deal with this? So this is really early in the stages. So good questions, and we just got to step through it. And I think Bent and I have been talking about this for 6 months. Jill and I talked about it at the VALA meeting. And I think everybody's in the same boat when we think about this. It's not like we're going to find in the town of Pulteney, there's going to be 70 parcels to add, you know, that meet this TC telecom bucket. It's going to be 1 or 2. You know, I would say probably under 10 is for most people. So it shouldn't be terrible. And I'm sure it'll get better next year.
Work in progress.
Yes. Let's take a look at the program, because that's having people think through this in their mind is probably a little more than what it really is. Can you see my screen where I have the grand list open?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we can, Chris.
Thank you. So this is all my test data, all fictitious data. In your 2025 as-built grand list, the one you're wrapping up and sending into PB&R right now, you do not have any telecom options available in that grand list. Okay, you don't have any access to any reports. The category is not in the category dropdown. So this is only related to grand lists starting in 2026 forward. So when I log into my working grand list, okay, my working grand list is going to now have a category code called telecom. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to use that. I'll also show you while I'm on this screen, we've also added this confidentiality button. This is for the Safe at Home program or 911 confidentiality. There's not a lot to this button. If you click on it, it just takes you to the state website that gives you information about Safe at Home. And basically, what it tells you is these people have enrolled in a program, don't give out their locatable address and that type of stuff. It's pretty vague, but Anybody that fills out this paperwork has to file it with the town clerk and share it with you and provide you with a PO box, so on and so forth. All this button does is allows you to track who filed for confidentiality. That's it. It's up to you to remove all the locatable information. So let's get back to telecom. So what Benton is explaining to you, if you can't, it's not a big deal. To the best that you can, if you can find a property on your grand list, like let's use this phone company. My test data, we tax personal property. So they're already on our grand list. If you know that this is a cell tower, then you might earmark it. If you're not really sure you want to switch it from personal property to real estate yet, make a note on it. Pick one of your location fields, type in a note, 2026, cell tower. Something. You may already have that in the description. But at least this one, you will know when Benton supplies you or the state of Vermont provides you the list from Sans Souci for your town, you can cross-reference the parcel he gives you against what you already had. If this parcel's on the list, then it may very well be that you need to switch it to real estate. Because remember, personal property is only taxed on the municipal side of the grand list, not the education. And this new law says we now want to tax that cell tower on both the municipal and education grand list. Okay. So before I go too deep, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to show you a 411. So all of you will notice your 411s now have a line item that says telecom. And you can see that I have no parcels in that bucket. Nobody should have any telecom parcels yet. Okay, so this is what my original 411 looks like. And you can see I have 4 parcels identified as equipment, personal property equipment. If I take that personal property cell tower and change it to telecom, then this number is going to drop to 3. And the value of that cell tower, or whatever Sans Souci tells me the value of that cell tower is, will go into this category. Pretty straightforward. We have also added to the grand list report, when you run, when you run your grand list report, the telecom parcels will be identified right where the category already is identified. Let me zoom in on that. So right here next to acres, this is an unlanded mobile home. So we've modified this for any telecom property you select, it will show TC. Okay. And we have also changed letter I. This used to be a routine for reappraisals that we haven't used in probably 15 years. So we've reused this report for a telecom report. If you look in the as-built grand list, it'll say assessor process, lister assessor functions. But now it's telecom. So every time you identify a parcel as telecom, you'll be able to run this report and see who it is. See who's on that list. Let's go take a look at one. Let's go take this first parcel. For those of you that have personal property, and Sans Souci tells you this is a cell tower that needs to be a telecom property. You're going to change this from personal property to real estate. And again, air quotes, right? This is when Sanssouci tells you the entire property is going to be personal property, is going to be a telecom property. If this company is submitting a personal property value for you for their equipment because you tax personal property, you may want to leave this parcel alone and add a brand new one just for the cell tower. And we'll go through that process too. But if this property is going to be total cell tower, I'm going to say yes. And now we're going to choose telecom down at the bottom. Owner code's probably going to be corporate owned. And here are the types of telecom properties this could be. So, because a parcel can be multiple things, it can be a cell tower, it can be fiber optics, it can be data transfers. So that's why these are check boxes. Again, you may not know this. This is information we expect to get from Mr. Sanssouci as well. So we're going to say cell tower, check it off. We're going to go over to the value exempt tab. We're going to pick land or building. I guess it really doesn't matter on these. If you split land and building out, if you do not, then you're just going to drop it right in real estate. Okay. I break out in my test data land and building. So I'm going to put $20,000. Flag it for a grievance. Do they need to flag it for a grievance, Benton? If Sanssouci and state is identifying, okay?
Absolutely. Yeah. All the same rules apply no matter who's in the grand list. If you change their value, they have a right to a notice and a right to grieve. And again, like I said, if they do grieve, send them through the process, deny them up to the state, and we'll take the appeal.
Okay. I'm going to press OK. And now you can see this parcel, just like every other real estate, is being taxed on the municipal side and the education side. So just like what Stockbridge was asking, am I going to have to add personal properties to my grand list? No, these are all deemed as real estate. You're going to add whatever Mr. Sanssouci in the state of Vermont tell you to add, just like this. If you're linked to our CAMA program, I would not have this parcel in CAMA because I am not valuing it in CAMA. Okay. But there are going to be some anomalies, things like those silos that have a leased antenna on top. Okay, we might have to add a miscellaneous adjustment or some sort of adjustment for those because according to Benton, they're going to give you the value for that lease on top of what the value for the property is. Okay, so I'm going to save this. Preview. Now you can see down in my equipment value, just like I said, equipment dropped to 3 parcels. Telecom just added 1 for $20,000. It's as simple as that. Let's go over and do our telecom report. And this report may change throughout as we go through and learn more about this process. So you can see I have broken down everything by the types of telecom. And it looks just like a grand list report. Okay, here's the property. Here's the span number. It's the same exact report. TC with a description, cell tower, and antennas. The next page, I'll zoom out a little bit. and I were thinking, if they're asking us to collect this data, probably somewhere along the way, they're going to ask us, how many cell towers are there in your town? How much fiber do you have? How many parcels with fiber optics? So we're just giving this straight count depending on what check boxes were selected. And the check boxes that are selected will be coming, that information will be coming from Sanssouci from his research. Okay. Are there any questions on that piece, Terry?
There are not any on that piece.
Nice. So we'll go through. Now let's say Mr. Sanssouci gives you a report and says, here's a parcel, and you look through your records and you don't find that parcel if you tax personal property in your grand list already. And like Beth in Stockbridge was saying, I don't have that parcel. I definitely don't have that parcel accounted for on my grand list. What do I do? You are simply going to add a parcel. It's not going to be a transfer because it's not real estate property being split from anywhere. It's the state of Vermont telling you this exists and you need to add it. So stay with your numbering scheme, however you like to do it. If you're doing tax maps and stuff like that, I mean, it might be easy with a cell tower to use your tax map identifier. But if it's fiber optics, it may be a little trickier. But I'm just going to go and add this parcel. Yes. What is it? There. It's good breakfast cereal. Okay. And just say, you may even make a note that this is from the Sanssouci report. 6C notes. I love notes. Notes are for other people, not for you necessarily. And I put in a date, 26/02/01. Maybe that's when you get the report. Parcel added from, oh boy. There. Something like that. Just so you know, more information is better than less information. Go ahead and choose your telecom. Select what it is. And like I said, this value he gives you may be a combination. From what I understand, it could be a combination of a few things. Corporate owned. And it defaults to real estate, so you don't have to worry about that. And then enter the value that Mr. Sanssouci gives you. Well, let's rephrase that. Mr. Sanssouci is going to give the state of Vermont a value. Then from what I understand, the state of Vermont will apply your CLA to that number. Is that correct, Benton?
I believe so.
Yep.
And this will be the process for the majority of the stuff you're going to see. This is going to be new property that was not on the grand list previously for most municipalities.
Right. So that brings up another little tidbit. Before I start adding these properties, I would go in and make a copy of my grand list. Glad you brought this up after I started. Before adding TC parcels. Okay? Now you have a point in time that you can compare before you had the telecom parcels added and after. So you can see when you added them and why. Good. Now when we go run our 411, and I did go a little quick, I should have flagged that for a grievance notice. There we go. Now we got two parcels, a $20,000 parcel and an $80,000 parcel added to our 411. And when I cancel here, my telecom report, I'll preview it. Here's my two properties. And when I go to the next page and I scroll down, even though I have two properties, I've got 4 different things selected. Because I got one parcel that's only fiber, and this other parcel has a cell tower, or I'm sorry, I got one parcel that was a cell tower, and then one parcel that I checked off landline, cell phone, and fiber optics. So that's why this is going to get a little tricky, because if somebody asks us how much value do we have just for landlines, we can't really do that from the information they're giving us. They're giving us the bulk number. And also we can uncheck these buttons and just choose. And as we go through it, like everything, as we evolve, this report's probably going to change a little bit and get a little more dialed in. See, now I only have that one item selected.
Okay, so I have some questions. When the cell tower changes, or there are some added, will we still get the value from Sans Souci?
All of this
Yeah.
information is coming from Sans Souci. Well,
And
from the state. It going from Sans Souci is delivering the state of Vermont values of all these properties. The state of Vermont's going to add the CLA and then pass the final value to you.
And this will be revalued every year. So every year, a new inventory request is going to be sent to these companies. Any additions or deletions, that number is going to change every year. So they're going to be picking up all new property that gets added year over year. These will change on an annual basis.
Okay, so Sarah, how does this affect municipalities with TIF districts and creation of new parcels therein?
That is a great question. There was another question regarding a not-for-profit radio station, radio tower. These are the type of questions I need to get answers to. I do not know. But
So
those
I
are
would think
exactly why I want to have this first meeting.
I would think off the cuff, those of you that have TIF districts, and this is a new entity, just like, because they're deeming it real estate, just like every other parcel of land in your TIF district, this is going to be an increment. They're going to want you to add this parcel to your TIF district if it's in that boundary. Okay. And I am sure, just like anything, you may want to identify that and discuss it with VEPC, Vermont Economic Progress Council, and PB&R, and say, this cell tower falls in our TIF district. We just want to make sure that this is what you want to do. You want this to happen, that we're going to add it to the TIF district as a new parcel. It should be no different than any other subdivision of a new parcel inside a TIF district. There's no acreage change. It's adding value to that TIF district. But keep everybody in the loop.
So Lisa has a question. Do you have a date when the value information will be available due to reappraisal deadlines?
Yes, good question, and one I've been asked a few times already. Contractually, these values are due to us, prepared for provision to each municipality by May 1st. And my job is to make sure that I get those numbers from Sans Souci to you by May 1st. But contractually, we're supposed to have those numbers from the contractor on that day.
And how is this also getting into VT-Pi?
VTPI will also have this new TC category code. So the same way all other real property parcels are being uploaded from NEMRC to VTPI or added directly to VTPI. Yeah.
So it would have to be done in the camera program. Because Chris had said not in the camera program, but it would have to because there are towns that would transfer from CAMA to VT-Pi without the use
Directly.
of NEMRC.
Right.
So
Right. If
NEMRC would have to put it into their CAMA also. I would
So
think.
it is in our CAMA because it's in here. So the category code, we're sending the category code already to VT-Pi. The TC category is in that same field. So we're now sending, let me bring it up so it's a little easier to talk about it. We already send this one bucket called category with all these different letters, R1s, R2s, S1s, S2s. We've just simply added TC on the end. So that code will go automatically. It's already going in your working grand list when we start submitting it. VT-Pi has to modify to receive. They received that bucket. Now they have to know on their 411 in grand list reports or whatever other reports they create. Let's just stick with a 411. They have to add that new row that says telecom to their 411. Okay. So
Okay.
those of you, if you're uploading directly from another CAMA vendor other than NEMRC, then those other CAMA vendors have to add that TC code if they're going to upload directly from their CAMA program. If they're going to import into NEMRC first and then upload, you're covered because the TC code is here.
Okay. So if there is an existing cell tower, when it was put in, the former assessor carved out 0.5 acres for the lease, but was never a lot line adjustment or subdivision.
Right. So that wasn't a true subdivision of that parcel. That was just the way an assessor was able to carve out a value basically for that leasehold amount, if I'm understanding that correctly.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, so seemingly that's not quite correct the way it's listed. It should, all of the land owned by whomever owns the underlying land should be listed together as a single parcel. And on that parcel can be an additional, I call it a line item, an additional contributory value for the leasehold value. So for the actual increase in property value from the lease being in place, I get X dollars per month to allow this company to use this property. So I think in that instance, that half-acre parcel is incorrect and really shouldn't be there, but that contributory value is added to the mainland parcel. And then the equipment is its own parcel, its own value with its own owner, which we will supply you.
Okay, so Linda's also asking, will you go over this again closer to the time?
Absolutely. This is our first blush. Really, today we're asking you to help us start digging into what already exists in the grand list and flag this property, so we can supply that to the contractor. When it gets time to entering this data and getting it listed in the grand list, we can have as many meetings as needed and reach out to me at any time with your specifics. This is going to be a collaboration to get this done.
Okay, so, but down the road, will they be doing this again if Sprint came in and added a tower?
Yep. Once
So
once
you'll
per
be doing it
year.
every year.
Every year, we're going to be
Okay.
sending out new inventory requests and getting new values supplied every year.
Is
All right.
Sanssouci doing that every year, Benton?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So
Okay.
that's a good
So-
segue. That last example of the cell tower that's being leased, because Bent and I were talking about that. Let me bring up a parcel and just use it as an example. Let's say this one right here. Let's say this parcel has a cell tower on it, or they have a silo that has a lease for an antenna on it. If you know that lease is there, what Benton and I are thinking is we want to know when Sanssouci gives us the antenna value or whatever company has it, we want to be able to do the same thing we do with contiguous parcels. We want to be able to point the telecom parcel that's leasing back to the parcel that's actually holding the lease. So if you know you have, and a few people have brought this up already, a person that has a silo leasing some antennas, then go to that parcel and type in 2026 lease on silo, something like that. Be consistent so that when we get the information from Sanssouci, we may have something similar to this contiguous parcel information field. So you can point the Sanssouci parcel back to the parent. And the parent parcel will point to the telecom parcel. So you'll know where stuff belongs, where it is located. But cut number one, if you can add any note, that'll make it easier when Sanssouci's done with his records. Does that make sense?
Yeah, basically, we would like you to start making a list of any land parcels that you think are subject to a lease for this type of property.
And the reason I use this location A, B, and C so often, especially when I do consistent naming conventions, you might even do 2026 TC if you want. If it's a lease, do lease TC. But the reason I do that is because these fields have lookups. So I can search everything that has 2026. They'll all be grouped together. And if we do 2026 lease or TC, something consistent, you'll be able to group these together really quick and make your life a little easier in the springtime when it's going to get a little hectic.
Okay, we have a ton of questions.
Good. This is
One
a
sec. If
broad
you have,
topic.
yeah, if you have multiple uses checked on the utility and you just get a total value, how would you answer the utility question of how much is my portion of that larger number?
So they're going to be listed by company. So there will be the value of anything owned by Comcast, the value of anything owned by Verizon, et cetera, et cetera. And they're reporting the actual equipment that is being valued. So they already kind of know what equipment is incorporated into that number. If I'm understanding the question. It could be multiple subtypes of property. It could be a landline and a fiber optic line. It could be different technologies. But as it is a grand list parcel, it is listed by each owner of each type of property.
Okay, so what happens to existing camera files once we switch to these accounts?
Nothing. So if you think about this, most of these are not on your grand list, right? Because this is new. Some of the cell towers are there somehow, right? And if it's new to your parcel, new to your town, it doesn't need to be in your, well, I will say it this way. If you're using the NEMRC and CAMA program, you don't need this new parcel in your CAMA program because you're not really valuing it. You're not using the cost tables of your CAMA program to come up with a value. You're just stuffing in a number. So just add it to your grand list and type in your number. If you're using other CAMA programs, then yes, you may need to add it and type in a value that Sanssouci's giving you.
As the CAMA program is the way to add a parcel to get to the VT-Pi grand list. You would have to add that parcel to those CAMA programs.
If
I
you're
would
going
think it'd be
to,
similar to the way that you add your utilities every year. The electric utility value every year. It would pretty much be the same.
but remember right now, if you are billing out of the grand list program, you want that because the span number, all the vendors thus far have been taking the span number that's generated from this grand list software and then utilizing it for you to update it in their CAMA software. Okay, I have not been reached out by any other CAMA vendor to say, we're going to add a parcel over here. Can you just import our span number into your grand list? Can we do it? Yes, we can. Has anybody approached me about getting that programming done for an import like that? No, they have not. So I'm giving you information the way the chips are right now. You'll probably want to add these to your grand list program to generate the span number first. Then add them to your respective CAMA program.
Okay, these TCs are taxable, taxed on the municipal as well as education, correct?
Yep. Real property. It's being considered real property. So both grand lists.
So Lisa Wright has a couple of questions. One, we seem to be emphasizing that these parcels subject to this new bill were previously considered personal property, but this was only true in some of the items in this list, correct?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it could be a mix of both. Some of it was equipment, which would have been taxed as personal property. There are most certainly towns that probably had cell towers that were classified as real estate previously. So it could be a mix of both. It's all going to be real estate, real property going forward, though.
And two, I thought I heard Benton say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that we should flag land parcels in NEMRC that we believe have a cell tower or other item that was previously considered non-taxable PP or for other reasons not picked up prior.
Yeah, and
This
that's where
concerns
Chris,
me.
sorry.
Yeah. This concerns me because the land parcel that has the cell tower or whatever on it may also have other land that is not encumbered by a cell tower lease. So we should have a new parcel for that lease, correct? I don't think those parcels should be muddled with the TC code for all of that land.
That's a very, very good point for this whole piece of it, Lisa. So the tower themselves, the equipment themselves owned by these companies will be a new parcel under that TC category for the physical elements of that communications property. But we don't want to change the category code for that land that has a lease on it. We just want to make sure we capture the value of that lease as it stands and apply it to that land parcel. So you're right, don't change that code, but we want to make sure we know it exists so we can attribute a lease value to that parcel. And that's where Chris is talking about this location, using that location notation. So we can just have a running list of all parcels that are subject to a lease.
Okay, so Shaftesbury, Gina, are all leases filed with the town clerk in the land records?
I won't say all. The lease itself is, I believe, supposed to be and typically filed in the land records, but those usually don't also disclose the business terms of that lease, the actual money being traded hands, and that's why we're going to have the assistance of Sans Souci to derive a leasehold value, that contributory value for it. So the lease itself may be there, but not the dollars and cents contract part of it.
So Richard Vincent, just an FYI, this is similar to a process that took place in New Hampshire several years ago. It sounds very complicated, but it really isn't. Skip is good at explaining how to set up the parcels in your system. All right, thank you for that.
Yeah,
And-
I'll take any attaboy I can get. This is going to be a process for all of us to work through together. But
At
as
least
Chris
I-
had said earlier, in most towns, this isn't going to be a large volume of information. It hopefully will be simpler as we get closer to it.
Lisa Wright said, I like the contiguous parcels solution. Thanks.
Yeah,
And then Natasha, do we still continue to send letters to companies requesting assessment values for the TC properties?
so Sans Souci will be handling the inventory requests for anything deemed communications property, but above and beyond that, for personal property towns, you still are responsible for your own inventory request forms to these companies for anything else they may own that doesn't fall under that category. That goes back to that stock and trade. If they're selling cell phone cases in the AT&T store, or machinery and equipment, if they have an office, all of the office furniture, copiers, that sort of taxable personal property, you're still responsible for filing those inventories with those companies.
And there's only
And-
44 out of 251 towns. There's only 44 towns that tax personal property, equipment, or inventory. Actually, 44 that do tax personal property, 8 of which tax inventory.
Inventory.
So there's
right,
not that many of you that have personal property on your grand list already.
right. And we have explained to the communications companies that there is a difference there, and they will need to be reporting the communications equipment to the contractor and any other personal property to you. We've made that distinction.
And Beth, I have not forgotten you. Did you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hang on.
There she
You're
is.
there.
Oh, we had you. Hit it again.
There we go. Yeah, how does this affect non-taxable parcels, churches, schools, town-owned buildings?
That's a great question, and I don't know. Someone else had asked about the nonprofit radio tower. I don't have a good answer for that, but we'll find you one.
I would use a
Okay.
little precedence in, say, a municipal building that rents out space for profit. That piece that they're renting out would be taxable.
Yep, that's a very good point. You
So-
lose your nonprofit status on profit-making
On a
elements
piece-
of a property.
Yep. So a church that rents out the basement, we always use this example. The church is worth $100,000, 50,000 for the basement and 50,000 for the first floor where the church services are. But in the basement, they rent that to a daycare, for-profit daycare. So they collect money, and that has nothing to do with the church services. So that portion is taxed. The $50,000 of the value of the property upstairs that's used for church services would not. So I would imagine this is going to fall under some of that.
I was actually thinking about church steeples here in Vermont,
Yep.
where the steeples are where you need the high point, and the steeple is going to be the high point. And how much is that 4 square feet of building? I mean, so our non-taxable buildings are going to start getting tax bills, correct?
Well, going back to what Benton explained, Mr. Sansucci is going to give us a lease value for that portion. So he's going to say, hey, that little piece up there on the steeple, they're getting $500 a month for that lease. So maybe they're going to be subject to $2,000 in taxes. $2,000 of value
Okay.
to be taxed
Yeah.
on.
They're
Okay.
gonna help us
These are-
capitalize that lease value.
Yeah. But these are all things that are just, they're gonna shake out as we go through this process, and these will be questions that people above Benton will direct.
So we have a comment from Lisa Wright from my or Lisa's experience. Leases, not Lisa, are not often recorded in the town in full. Also, there are multiple assignment of leases to various shell companies that go with the leases. And then Thomas said the lease value would be taxable to the church and the real property would be taxable to the renter. There.
Right.
And that's all of them.
That's correct. Yeah, and Lisa, just to your comment on the complexity of these leases, absolutely. And the leaseholders are encouraged to not disclose any of this information. There's pass-through clauses in these leases where, you know, Verizon, AT&T will say, we will be responsible for any increase in real estate tax that you get because of this, but also don't disclose any of this business dealings with us, with anybody. You're not required to do so, and we ask you don't do so. Having an expert appraisal company who deals in this property day in and day out, they know the market value of typical lease agreements and will be able to help us pin down those values when we don't have, you know, exact information. What if the leaseholder is the state or town? Municipally owned, state-owned property, we don't tax ourselves. I guess that would probably fall under exempt, although I'll default to Christie or Terry if I'm missing an element there.
I think you're probably correct just based on what I know of a solar facility owned by the state. I think you're probably correct.
So big takeaway now, while it's still relatively speaking the quiet season in our lister world, if you can do anything you can to help us identify what's already existing in the grand list, that's a huge effort. We'll supply all that information that you flag for us to the contractor, and the contractor is well underway with developing the value for this new property. It's on the move. And Linda says quiet season. I know, relatively speaking, the quiet season. It never ends in Listerland. No, I'm glad it was helpful. Thank you all. Again, all of your questions are questions I can pose whenever I don't know what's going on. So this is going to be a group effort. I appreciate all your patience in this, and we will get it done. And it's an iterative process. Next year will be better than this year, and the year after that will be better than that. We'll have this figured out in the long run.